Close your eyes, exhale, feel your body relax, and let go of whatever you're carrying today.
Well, I'm letting go of the worry that I wouldn't get my new contacts in time for this class. I got them delivered free from 1-800-CONTACTS. Oh my gosh, they're so fast.
And breathe.
Oh, sorry. I almost couldn't breathe when I saw the discount they gave me on my first order. Oh, sorry. Namaste.
Visit 1-800-CONTACTS.com today to save on your first order.
1-800-CONTACTS.
This episode is brought to you by Peloton. Break through the busiest time of year with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. With real-time guidance and endless ways to move, you can personalize your workouts and train with confidence, helping you reach your goals in less time. Let yourself run, lift, sculpt, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
Are you on Substack? Because I am, and I'd love to connect with you there. I process things there over Saturdays and Sundays, days off, sometimes weeknights as I'm researching and reading other articles, and it inspires me to write things where I'm going deeper into the behind the scenes of what some of the episodes on A World of Difference are all about. I'd love to connect with you there. So if you are on Substack, find me. You can go to loriadamsbrown.substack.com as a free, or I would prefer a paid subscriber, because then you get access to more of the in-depth things that are exclusively for my paid subscribers. I keep my prices as low as they can be on Substack, as low as they allow. But I do believe in being paid for my work, and I believe you should be paid for yours too. So join me there and let's make a difference together. Welcome to the A World of Difference podcast. I'm Lori Adams Brown, and this is a podcast for those who are different and want to make a difference. Welcome to A World of Difference. I'm Lori Adams Brown, and this is a podcast for leaders who know that the next chapter of their impact requires more than execution. It requires perspective. Today's conversation is for CEOs, founders, senior executives, leaders globally standing at an inflection point. The kind of moment where the stakes are high, the noise is loud, and the clarity you need can't be found by working harder or faster. My guest today is Karen Kunkel Young, an executive coach and strategic advisor to senior leaders who are navigating pivotal career and leadership decisions. Karen is known as the telescope in the room, the person who helps leaders step back far enough to actually see what they can't see from inside the work, the blind spots that are forming, the influence shifting, and opportunities that are hiding in plain sight. With more than 2 decades of experience leading creative programming for global media brands, shows you may have heard of, Karen brings a storyteller's precision to leadership transitions and helping leaders move from reactive momentum to intentional, future-focused impact. In my own work advising CEOs, CHROs, and C-suite leaders and senior leadership teams, globally, I've seen this firsthand. Resilience and learning agility aren't just personal traits. They are strategic advantages in today's world of work and into the future. And the leaders who thrive long-term are the ones willing to pause, zoom out, and ask better questions before their next move defines them. This conversation is about agency, about alignment, and about what becomes possible when leaders stop managing what's urgent and start shaping what's next. Let's get into it. Hi, Karen. It's exciting to have you on the show today. I'm really looking forward to getting to know you a little bit better. We already know each other somewhat, but we're going to talk today about all things around career and pivotal moments in careers and leadership. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Lori. I am so excited for our conversation.
Me too. So I know that you've had a really interesting career and you're in this position where you're actually helping others in a lot of ways with what you do. And my first question for you is, we have a lot of senior executives that listen to the podcast globally in various industries. And some of them are finding themselves right now in this moment in the early parts of 2026 at really pivotal moments in their career for various reasons. It could be that they've been laid off from their job here in Silicon Valley. It could be that they experienced a values misalignment, or they just got to a point where they needed and they felt they wanted something different. So when we think about those senior executives in this pivotal moment in their careers, what are they most likely not seeing clearly, even though they're actually highly capable?
Yeah, thanks for that, Lori. First of all, I just wanted to acknowledge that, all of the people that are undergoing layoffs or huge transitional moments, maybe by no fault of their own, industries shifting, mergers and acquisitions, as you say, the values misalignments. Let's start with I see you, and, I'm not in your shoes right now, but what I can say is the top of 2026 now is a perfect time to really reclaim that agency in your career. A lot of times I'm talking to executives, Lori, that there's been a certain way of working that has worked for them for so many years, sometimes even decades. And then all of a sudden there may be some brakes that are put on them by again, like an external first force. And they're like, well, what happened? I thought everything was going just fine. And people assume that the old way of working, the old way of communicating that's served them in the past will still serve them. Yet sometimes the goalposts have changed, the rules have changed. I talk to a lot of people, Lori, that have been phenomenal executors, and then they get moved up into leadership or another level of leadership. And they're a bit blindsided because they have to show up in a whole new way. And, a lot of times, as people change and upper management might change, it's all a lot on the individual to also make sure that the way that they're showing up is also communicated in the most appropriate way now, showing the leadership qualities that they have, showing how they've moved the needle in their project and their business, and always tying it to business outcomes. So I think I might have covered a few other things in that part of the conversation. So if there's something else that I could clarify for you, I'm happy to do so.
No, it was a great way to kind of broad brush some of the things going on. And we're going to definitely dig deeper into some of those details. But I would say, you work with leaders who are successful, but they're feeling increasingly reactive, I guess. And so what helps them take back a sense of control when they feel like they've lost that over their career without really undoing all the things they've built up until now?
I think that it's important to remember that you are the CEO of your career, whether you're the actual CEO, whether you're an independent contractor, whether you're an employee, and you are the one that's in charge of your trajectory. I feel a lot of times we as women, we as men, we as humans give our power away. We give our power away to the CEO, to a company, to an entire industry. And the only person that's in charge of our career is us. With regard to the choices that we make, how we show up, how we communicate our story in the workplace, and how we make sure that we have the visibility and influence that accurately represents us. So, I hear from clients sometimes about, well, my review isn't until December, so I'm going to wait until then to bring something up. We're just in January. You can't possibly wait 11 months to make sure that you are always communicating. Err on the side of over communicating, making sure that you're aligned, your goals, your personal and professional goals are aligned with your boss, with the company, all of that, really taking stock of that. So it doesn't feel like, you're on this hamster wheel sometimes of just go, 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 go. And then months go by, years go by, and it's like, oh my gosh, wait a second. Why has all of this been happening when it doesn't even align with what I want? So to be able to really take stock of where you're at now at the top of the year and where you really want to go is so mission critical.
It's really important. And I think we all need these perspectives in our lives, helping speak into our career to almost mirror back to us the values that we have. And so I've really benefited from executive coaches, mentors, sponsors, advisors, people who've helped shape my career into what I wanted it to be as well. And sometimes you can get so head down in the details or even the stress of a very rapidly changing work environment, especially when it's high stakes. I've certainly worked in those types of environments where it feels as though I don't know if I can use this one-on-one with my manager to bring up my career aspirations. And so it feels sometimes like maybe once a year is the only chance you get. But I think that what you're saying has also been said to me, that you are in charge of your career. And even if it feels a little bit uncomfortable, those uncomfortable conversations at least give you some clarity on what it's looking like now. And then you get to make some choices, right? Many organizations promote, excuse me, promote experts into leadership roles, and then they wonder why people struggle. Maybe they've had an incredible success in a particular role, such as being an outstanding engineer, and then they get promoted to manager. Those are completely different skill sets, and we see that a lot here in Silicon Valley. In fact, I've worked in talent development with many of them and Fortune 100 companies here, and it's something we see again and again. But what actually needs to shift when someone moves from being an expert to being a leader?
Great question. And this is really, top of mind for me right now. I'm always about creating like a win-win situation in my professional life and my personal life with my clients and such. And I think that by promoting someone to a new role, however exciting it is because they're an expert, by not giving them leadership training, it's actually a lose-lose for everyone involved. It's a loss for that individual because you don't know what you don't know. So they're trying to do the best that they can, but may not have that leadership training. It also creates undue stress for upper management because now they're having to be pulled into the weeds, answering a lot of questions, getting pulled away from their big strategic vision. So it's a loss for them. And when this, creates more, it's almost like a time bandit, time and bandwidth bandit, it is also a loss for the company. So I actually have recently launched something called Telescope Labs, which is, it's basically a modern twist on leadership training. I don't want to go through and give people traditional leadership training. And what I want to do is help these specific individuals go into a strategic leadership lab. What is the current problem that's happening right now? Let's deal with it, not just with the fire that's happening, but how to look at it as a leader, how to look at it as it relates to the business outcome, how to look at it from that 30,000-foot view. Because when you are more junior, you may be more in an executor role. But as you become more senior in any company, to be able to look at things through that leadership lens is mission critical. So how can we arm these newly promoted individuals to stop putting out the fires and to look at things through the larger leadership lens that creates a win-win window for everyone involved, for the individual, for senior management, and for the company. So they can have that hands-on support as they're going through the situation to help them get to the other side.
Really helpful. I feel like so many leaders start to experience a level of loneliness, especially maybe in that first leadership position. But I see it a lot in CEOs that leadership can be quite lonely. And they do need support around them, just sounding boards. Often that's the role I've played with people, is just to be a sounding board. And I think every leader needs that person because you get sometimes so mired into the details. To bring your head up for a little perspective is part of what leadership is, and it's one of the hardest parts of it. But you describe yourself as the telescope in the room, which I love. And when leaders finally zoom out and see that bigger picture, really, what do you think is probably the most common hard truth that changes how they lead or the choices they make next?
Oh, that's a good question, Laura, because there's so many of them. Where I see it the most is when people are trying to level up where they're at in their current career, going from SVP to CTO, from VP to SVP. They are in this sort of operator mindset. Well, this is what I've done. Again, what I've done for so many years that's worked. I am that safe pair of hands. I can make it happen. And it's like, hang on a second. Guess what? Everyone else in the organization views you as that safe pair of hands. That safe pair of hands is not going to get you to the next level. So what sort of new perspectives can you bring? Like, how can we expand your vision to what's possible? of something that I'm always encouraging people to do is to step into that role before you're ready. So if you're the SVP and you're looking to get that CTO role next, what would it look like to show up as that CTO every day? Now, obviously, you're not going to go into your work and say, I am the CTO. I'm talking more about the mindset. How would your mindset shift if you had that greater vision that you were trusted with to be able to really shape the business as opposed to shaping what project is in front of you? So that happens quite a bit. And I think it's also one other thing I'd say, Lori, is just the actual amount of possibility out there is when we are in any role, again, whether it is a senior executive, whether it is a founder, whether you are the CEO, you're seeing things through one lens, and that becomes your lens of life. A lot of us, our career is a huge part of our identity. And when you work with a coach or, like you said, a mentor, a trusted advisor, to think about, well, what if it were different? What would that look like? What would, other opportunities look like for you? What would almost like not me do? And when you start to play with those different possibilities, things you would never have even considered start to emerge, and it gets really fun about what you might want to do next.
I really love that you answered it this way, because that's been my experience of you and the time that we've known each other, and even some of the coaching that you've given me, which I'm really grateful for, because I think sometimes that's the value of a good coach, is they can open up this world of possibilities for us that we hadn't considered before, or sort of elevate us out of a fear, maybe even open up a green pasture to us with a question that gives us this wonder and exploration of possibility, like what you mentioned. But I think fear so often holds us back. The reality is we're human. We have emotions, whether we acknowledge them or not. And so those unspoken fears can be often what holds us back. So, and high stakes transitions often come with unspoken fear of losing relevance or status or momentum. And so how do you help senior leaders name and work through those fears without letting them quietly drive their decisions?
Well, first of all, excellent use of the word name. It's important to name it and not just push it to the side. Like, I can speak for myself. Sometimes sometimes it was easier to just bury it and just plow through it. But that may be helpful in the short term, but that's not going to work for the long term. So first, name the fear. What is it? And two questions that I love asking my clients are, what is the worst that could happen? Make it the absolute worst case scenario if you asked for a promotion, or if you got fired, or if you never found a job again in your life. What is the worst thing that could happen? And let's go there and let's really feel it. And then question two is, what is the best thing that could happen? What if you asked for that opportunity? You have no idea what that person is going to answer. Maybe they'll say yes. Maybe they'll come back to you with something even better. But, first embrace the fear, then think about how bad it is. Most times it's not as bad as we think it is. And in the best case scenario, it might even provide a better result than we ever thought. I'll share a quick anecdote this week when I was working with my coach in an intensive, and we were put through a various challenge for our business. And what I realized is, or someone might have said in the room, you're not going to die by doing this. There's this part of our ancestry that feels we get into this survival mode. But when I realized that by doing something that was hard, doing something that was outside of my comfort zone, I actually wasn't going to die. That's actually really strangely comforting. I'm like, oh, well, if I'm not going to die, I can actually do anything, and it challenged me to try a few new things this week, tried to really detach from the outcome from them. And it was it made me feel, it helped me put any fears to the side and really just test it out and see.
That's incredible. And I love that even as a coach, you're still learning some of the things that you're helping others do. I think that is the nature of almost any profession. Doctors are still working on being healthy, and they're not always the best at it. And, teachers are still learning the things that they teach. And it's, whether you're a history teacher, relearning history all over again. And then, business coaches who've maybe done a startup are still learning as they help others do it. And I think that's the value of being in professions that help others, whatever that looks like in leadership. And I do believe that overcoming those fears like you said, they kind of go back to our ancestry. Even there's some epigenetics that we know about, that if you've had ancestors that walk through very difficult parts of human history and that's in you, sometimes we don't acknowledge that those things are being somewhat activated. And that's where, like you said, just to feel it, there's so much really good science around feeling it, naming it, and then as what you're encouraging people to do is sort of elevate the wonder part of it. What could happen? What if? Or what's the possibilities? I think all of those are really key for coaching, and I think I've experienced you doing that really well, at least in the session that we had together. You've got a background in global media, which is really fascinating, and it sort of gives you this storyteller's lens on leadership, which I think is really interesting and beautiful. So how does a leader's narrative, or the story they tell about who they are and what they're here to do, either expand or limit the future influence that they have?
A fantastic question, Lori. Yes, I used to be in my previous career an unscripted showrunner a lot in the lifestyle world. I worked on Tim Gunn's Guide to Style. I worked on Project Runway, not as a showrunner, restaurant stakeout, and for almost 30 years, I have become a master storyteller of helping people tell their story, whether it was the person next door, an A-list celebrity, a CEO, whoever that is. So what I do is use all of these storytelling skills that I have to help people, executives, tell their story in the workplace. And honestly, Lori, it's mission critical, because a lot of people think if they're showing up every day and doing the work, that everyone is going to see it. Their bosses are going to see it, their peers are going to see it, and it's all out there. Guess what? People don't know what you're doing unless you tell them. They don't, especially in today's remote work environment. It is so easy to go unseen. So to be able to share your story, being able to not tell what the what is of your story, but to tell the so what of your story. Why is it important what you're doing? What sort of impact have you made on your department, on a project, or a business? Being able to tie your story to the business outcomes, and then being able to communicate that to the decisions that makers, where it really, really matters. I was working with a client once who had such an impressive resume, and he was overseeing 9 figures of business every year. He had double-digit growth for the last 5 years. If I didn't know what his story was, I'm like, I'm going to hire him immediately. This guy has really got it going on. And what he shared with me was, you know what, Karen, yes, I have all of these oppressive achievements, but the person that's sitting next to me who has made half as much an impact as I have, he is the one that's getting promoted and not me. And when we really dug into it, Lori, it was because he was not sharing his story. He was showing up every day, he was doing his work, he was leading his individual team, but he wasn't communicating that to decision makers, and he was left out of the conversation. And who wants to be left out in the conversation, especially when they're working so hard? So being able to tell a story of your impact, headlining it with what is the most important, sharing, what your challenge was, what impact you've made, and what that result was with the larger business is so important, because if you don't share that, no one will know. And P.S., sometimes it's also important what you don't say in your story. A lot of times people get into the weeds and they say they were working late at night and this happened, this happened, this happened. So it's what are the most important things that the decision makers need to know about the so what, your impact, communicate that powerfully, make recommendations. Don't provide a million different options. Make those recommendations and know that you are more than that trusted set of hands that have executed, you are actually the person who is making decisions that are shaping departments and helping the business move forward.
That is excellent advice. And that has been my experience later in my career in the last few years as well, seeing that happen again and again, and experiencing it myself. I think I am not alone in the sense that I don't always love telling people about what I do because I struggled earlier, especially moving to the United States for the first time and speaking about what I do in the way that culturally works here, which is a little more direct, actually a lot more direct, and what felt a lot more like bragging and something that I felt was morally wrong. But I worked through that and understanding the American culture a little bit better and doing it in a way that felt congruent for me and felt authentic for me and values aligned, and understanding that if people didn't understand the impact I was making, the challenge I faced, the action I took, and the result in the positions that needed to know it, it was a favor to them to give them that visibility, because I know for me in my own leadership, I need my direct reports to tell me what they're doing because I don't have visibility in a globally distributed team, type A or the UK. And I do, I have had opportunities to visit direct reports in different countries over the years that I've led, but I'm not with them every single hour of every single day. And so I, as a leader, also need them to communicate that to me. And so I think what you're saying is really important. And sometimes it's that mindset shift that you're not doing it a way that's bragging about yourself. Although there's a certain element of that that's not wrong, because if you've done it, why wouldn't you congratulate yourself just like you would a friend? But that can be a hard jump to make, and it's not always easy for me either. I think that, yeah, have you experienced that with any of your clients? Have you experienced that personally, that whole position of how to frame what seems like bragging?
I do. I actually run a group coaching program with senior execs, and we cover every 2 weeks, we cover the specific topic about how to advocate for yourself without it feeling like it's bragging. People are very good at working on a project or helping other people's story. But as soon as like the spotlight is on them, it's like, what do I say? Like, I don't want to upset the apple cart. I don't want people to think like I have this huge ego. But back to what you said, Lori, if you did it, it's not bragging. It's literally just a fact. And it's doing yourself a disservice by not communicating it. So by communicating it very factually, communicating it how it ties to your individual goals or the goals of the business is also a great way that it doesn't seem like self-promotion, because you are showing your actual work to move the company forward. And actually really owning it. I think a lot of times, people, when they get mealy mouthed, like, oh, they're just not sure, they're, again, taking away their power. And if they did something to really create impact within their company, why not shout it from the rooftops? It's so, again, creating that win.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I love that. If you've done something in a company, and certainly if you've led a team, you're sharing about your part of it, what you did, but you're also helping your team be more visible if you lead them, because they've also helped you do that work, and it's been a team effort. And so I think that's been primarily one of the ways that I've been able to kind of overcome that, is to say, when I speak up for what I have done, I'm speaking up on behalf of my team as well and sharing that credit with them. And sometimes I have the visibility with certain executive levels of leadership that maybe my team doesn't. And that's a way to advocate, which is a very strong value of mine, and to promote the work of others as well. So I love how you framed that. And then also, listening, we kind of acknowledged this in the beginning of this podcast, is that there are people out there currently looking for their next opportunity. A lot of people here where I sit in Silicon Valley, because the economy has not been the best over the last several months. And we've seen some massive layoffs and even some smaller ones. And then some, senior executives even ousted for various reasons. It can happen just because of a leadership shift. Like you mentioned, industries change. But there's just a lot of people, great leaders, high performers, that are looking for work right now, and it's not easy. So as they're going in to help, find their next opportunity, and they're sort of creating this ways they want to show up in their personal narrative how do you coach people in situations like this that are preparing for maybe job interviews, informational interviews, as they're going in and sort of putting themselves out there after walking through something that might have been somewhat emotionally difficult?
Well, step one, Lori, would be to dig in on what might have been emotionally difficult for them. Before we can move and talk about interviews, we have to acknowledge what happened and where you're at right now. And sometimes that can be quick and sometimes that can be a little bit more lengthy. Every person is showing up differently with a different situation. Really going deep into what happened, what thoughts and feelings and beliefs are associated with that, and how to reframe them in order to get to the other side. Again, like we talked about before, working through the fears, working through the limiting beliefs, trying to help shift that perspective into something else. Now, it's also, might I add, in today's marketplace, it really is key to have as many conversations as possible. The days of applying for jobs on LinkedIn or Indeed or company websites, sometimes you might have to formally submit it through there, but those days are kind of over right now. It is so crucial to be talking to people at companies that you are interested in working at, talking to people in your warm network, talking to second and third degree connections. How can I help? How can I help? That is really important right now. And how in those conversations, you will have that opportunity to talk about what your unique value proposition is. You talked about how do I work with clients. So if we first of all go and dig deep of what happened, then it's okay, so what are your unique strengths? What are your superpowers that only you can do? What lights you up? To get out of bed every day and go to work, and to really be able to communicate what that unique value is, how you can help an employer solve a problem is mission critical. And for you to stand in your unique value right alongside your unique values and having those conversations is going to result in new and different opportunities than you think that you may even not even think about right now. I'm not saying that go out and have 10 conversations this week and you're coming back with a job. No, there is no magic wand, but the more people you talk to, it's, you become that, your conversations have a multiplier effect. So keep talking to people, keeping persistent, keep showing up. If you're consistently showing up every day, the laws of the world are that something will happen, usually when you least expect it, with the person who you least expect it from.
That's been my experience too. And I'm so grateful for all the sponsors in my career who've opened doors for me, because I think, especially as a woman, there's a lot of research around this that a lot of people already know this, but when we see hiring happen, we're trying to work in the talent world to try to eliminate some of that bias that comes out right away. AI in some cases is better than humans at eliminating that bias. In some cases, it's not, especially around, compensation and gender parity and things like that. But also some of the wording that just we've associated with being either masculine or feminine and whatever. It's kind of a hot mess in some ways. But generally speaking, we've seen this research again and again that shows that when a woman applies, she's often only seen for her experience, not for her potential. Whereas we, for whatever reason, see men more often for their potential. And it's not to blame anyone. It's just how our narratives this is the story we tell ourselves, myself included, that I've had to work on really trying to be fair when I assess people I'm recruiting. And so, I think that when we have executives, especially if we think of that executive woman that, you mentioned earlier, that safe pair of hands, she's been an incredible operator. She's done so much. She's borne the emotional load of the office. She's been a great manager, not only doing her job well, but managing her direct reports, getting stuff done in very fast-paced environments and going at that rapid speed. And then suddenly, if she gets laid off, the job search right now, especially for executives, is taking some people 10 to 12 months very commonly, because if you're just doing, kind of what we're saying is having a bunch of meetings, getting to know how the industry is changing, and then some roles are being put out there and they're not really hiring for those roles. So it can be a little, I guess, not exactly what you see. And for people who are used to operating at a certain speed and a certain level and getting stuff done, and then they get into their own job search, which they're the CEO of, and it's not moving fast at all. In fact, it's painfully slow. And they're also being dinged maybe for not having the potential, even though they do. What kind of advice would you give a woman like that might be listening right now, maybe here in Silicon Valley or in Singapore or wherever she's at?
Two things I'd like to just share here, Lori, is that what I'm hearing from you is what a lot of like high performing women and men do is that when, they're in a crisis moment, they're going to act in the same way that they've done the rest of their life, is to do more, to have more conversations, to have more plans, more spreadsheets, more doing. What I would offer as an alternative is like pause. Who do you need to be in this moment? And instead of doing more, how do you want to show up? I did a LinkedIn post a couple weeks ago is that we don't need 100 people to say yes to us. We only need one. So how are you going to show up today in this moment with this conversation and see where it goes and stop with the rat race, Think, really reflect about who you want to be as you look for this next job. That's number one. Number two, with regard to your question about potential, I hear you, and you are certainly the HR expert, and you have seen so much in all of your experience. What I would add to that is that it is on us, whether we're male or female, to connect the dots for that hiring manager. And that goes back to like your storytelling that, say it's a stretch job and it might not be exactly one-to-one. How are you going to paint that picture of you already being in the role? How are you in an interview? If you're asked an interview question, have you done X? You know that there's no way that you've done that. What you can do is like, a great question. I'm really curious. What about, being able to scale a company within a year is important to you? Then you can get some more information from them of why that's important. Then guess what? You can have another answer of something you've never scaled a company in a year, but you've done something that related to what they said in their answer. And then you can help connect those dots like, hey, that's exactly, I do this actually. So I think a lot of times we feel like, oh, we need to have done exactly every single thing that they've asked for. And if not, we're worthless. We're never going to get the job. No, pause, ask for more information and connect those dots to the hiring manager so they can see you in roles just as well as you see it for yourself.
That's a really good answer. I think so often we're taught, especially being raised in schools, be the good little girl, the straight A student, and answer the question you were asked. And then you have to shift sometimes in leadership to, especially people who work in politics, or especially when I sit here in Silicon Valley and hear some of these pitches from founders, which a lot of these companies these days are AI related companies. But when you're pitching and then you get questions from those investors of us in the audience, sometimes they're being asked a question and the ability to answer the question that really reflects who you are and what you can answer is a certain skill set that we don't necessarily have as operators in jobs every day. And so that's, I think, also the reality of people who've been blazing forward, highly productive, getting promoted, and then suddenly find the brakes put on and they have to make a shift to look for a job in another company has a completely different skill set. And I think that's what you're showing us is taking some time to say, who am I in this situation? Who do I want to be? And there's just that value of the pause can be one of the hardest things, but probably one of the most beautiful things in the end because we get to show up as we want to show up. Well, thank you so much for everything you've shared. I want to give our audience a chance to find you if they want to know more about the work that you do, the coaching you provide, the leadership lab, and all the things you have to offer.
You can find me at KarenKunkelYoung.com. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. I do 2 to 3 posts per week about topics of the day, topics that are important to my clients. curious questions that I put out there. And yes, I work with high-performing senior executives who are at this mission-critical point in their career, whether it's a career transition, whether they're doing a corporate exit, whether they're trying to make their side hustle their hustle, something really monumental that they need that second set of eyes and ears and support in that. And that's where you can find me.
Thank you so much, Karen, for all that you do to support leaders to be the best leaders they want to be and to stay congruent with who they are and how they want to show up, both in their job searches and as they're, in their current careers and moving forward, whether they're pivoting or staying put. I just really appreciate this conversation today. And everybody go out and find Karen and follow more of her thought leadership and reach out to her if you want to know more. Thanks for being on the show today, Karen. And I'm going to have you answer a question for our Patreon supporters who are going to be waiting over there for an exclusive with you. But thank you so much for this conversation today.
Amazing. Thank you for the opportunity. I really enjoyed our conversation and look forward to doing it again sometime.
As we close today's conversation, here's what I want to leave you with. The most consequential leadership decisions are rarely about capability. They're really about perspective. It's the mindset. Whether you're a CEO navigating scale, a founder redefining your role, or a senior leader sensing that your next chapter requires something different, clarity doesn't come from more activity. It comes from creating the space to see. Karen's work reminds us that leadership isn't about just solving problems. It's about positioning yourself for sustained influence over time, alignment, and long-term impact. And if this conversation resonated, I really encourage you not just to reflect, which is a great leadership skill to have, but also to share it. Send it to a fellow leader who's standing at a crossroads, even if they haven't named it yet, but you see it. And you're that friend who wants to help them. Maybe you're a CEO or a senior executive navigating transformation, organizational or personal, and you don't have to do it alone because these are the conversations that prevent blind spots from becoming risks and help resilience turn into strategic advantage for you and for the place where you work. Thank you for being a part of this community of difference makers, leaders who are willing to slow down, learn fast, lead forward with intention into the future of work that we all want to create and see. I'm Lori Adams Brown, and this is A World of Difference. Okay, difference makers, I know you, and I know when you hear something you really enjoyed and you learned from it, you want to share it. I am like that too, which is why I love to promote guests on this podcast for you to get to hear them yourself. Sometimes they write books, sometimes they write on Substack, sometimes they podcast, sometimes their voice is just every day in the workplace where they live and impact their communities in a variety of ways with all the hats that they wear. So if you enjoyed this episode, and I hope that you did, please share it with a friend, a parent, a neighbor, somebody you went to boarding school with back in the day, somebody at work, your boss, people on your team, because this is a message they needed to hear. And it have impacted you. Please give us a 5-star rating and give us a review. It really helps our reach for more people like you to find us, the difference makers, the listeners, the leaders, the people in your communities that are making the world a better place. I appreciate you so much.
Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.